Hello and welcome to Senior Solutions, where we bring you topics affecting seniors and their loved ones. And I'm your host, Mindy Felinton. Some of you may wonder, I've heard that possibly there's something that's not quite right with the way that my neighbor's being treated, but I don't know what to do. I don't know where to turn. Well, my guest today is Bonnie Klem, and she is the supervisor for Adult Protective Services investigations for Montgomery County. And she is going to talk with us today about Adult Protective Services and what to do in that situation and others. Bonnie, thank you very much for being here today.
Oh, I'm glad to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Tell me, what does the Adult Protective Services for Montgomery County do? What is their function?
Well, our basic function, our reality function, is to try and make elderly people and vulnerable adults as well, because vulnerable adults are people 18. We work with people who are 18 and up until 100 and whatever. And we've often had people who are 104 and 103. But our goal is to attempt to bring them into a safe environment. And often we get the calls. We don't go after the calls. They come to us. And we check on whether there really is a problem. We take the calls in according to COMAR regulations that we have here in Maryland.
What is COMAR?
Well,
for
basically,
people who may not understand what that is?
It's the rules of the basic concepts of what we're doing. You know, you have to have an outline, basically, of what you can do and what you can't do, and that's what it is. And it's written by the state and not by the federal government. So this is Maryland state regulations, basically. And so we often, get calls from all sorts of people.
Well, why don't you talk with me a little bit about the types of calls? Give some examples of a call that you'll get, and then maybe a nice way to follow up with that is what's the next step in the process in that particular kind of a call?
Okay, if we get, I'm going to give you a call that we can't respond to, basically, and then I'm going to tell you about a call so that we can move into the process. If we have a call and somebody is saying, I just don't like the way my neighbors are treated. Often there are arguments in the house. All right, that's the first part of this call. And what we'll start to say is we'll dig through and say, what do you mean by arguments? Do you see people hurting each other? Do you see people hitting each other? Do you see people crying or depressed? What are the issues that you're looking at? And what we're looking at in Adult Protective Services is whether somebody who is vulnerable has been abused, somebody who has possibly been neglected, somebody who has been exploited in a number of ways, whether it is financial or whether it is some type of physical exploitation.
And what do you do how do you assess that situation in your role as within the Adult Protective Services?
Okay, and it's very specific. So, again, we're staying within the rules of what state law is supposed to be. And so we need to find out if this person is in fact a vulnerable adult that you're concerned about. And so if the person is 18 or over, and if they have some problems with either their capacity, how they think, how they're thinking, do they have ways of getting in and out of situations, are they able to make a phone call and say, help me, I think I'm in trouble and I need someone to come and help me? If they're able to make a plan, then they don't really qualify for Adult Protective Services.
So they're not deemed to be vulnerable?
Yes, because they can advocate for themselves.
Okay.
Another part of vulnerable is you can have a person who is perhaps in a wheelchair, but they know how to work their chair. They're strong, their arms are strong, or they have, a scooter, and they can get around and they can make phone calls and say, would you bring this, this food that we need for today or for this week? Can you do this for me? They know how to do all of that. They're not vulnerable adults. Now, we can make suggestions, but we're not going to pick up the case, meaning that we're not going to take a social worker and go out to the house. And sometimes we go out with a nurse and a social worker. And sometimes we even go out with the police when something is really very strange. We can go into that later because that's quite extreme. But we are doing that now. So basically, if a person can handle their own needs, they can handle their daily needs, they can wash themselves, or they have somebody come in who helps them with their, all their daily living needs, then they're okay. And, if they ask questions, we'll be glad to help. We'll send out information, but we will not take the case in as a regular Adult Protective Service case. However, if you have a situation where this person is getting demented, they can't remember whether somebody has taken the food from them or not. Did they buy it? Did they forget to buy it? Did they know how to get to the grocery to buy their food? Are they getting thinner? And somebody would be reporting that. They're getting thinner, they're looking bad. She's always wearing the same dress. I haven't seen this lady in another dress. Or it's summer out. It's this, it's this terribly warm summer, and she's wearing 2 coats. All of the, and this sounds extreme, but believe it or not, this is what we see.
Yeah.
This is what we see, and it's very, very crucial because we can make changes. We can start to make changes. Now, we have no right to go into somebody's home. If we find the address, we choose a worker who's going to go do the work on this particular case. If the worker gets to the door, makes a phone call, says I'll be there, gets to the door, and from the window or from the inside of the door because they don't want to open it up, I don't want you coming into my house. I don't want you. Don't bother me. I changed my mind. Well, we're still concerned about this person, so we may back off, or we may say, how about if I take my phone and call you? And we'll actually call somebody even though we're on their stoop anyway. Or how about if you just open the door and leave the lock on? That's the extent that we do to be able to get into somebody's home to take a look at them. Because until we actually, as we say, in the vernacular, if we don't eyeball them, if we don't have a sense of communication with them, we don't know what's happening. We're only hearing hearsay. Mm-hmm. But if we get in, we see the person, we realize that she's possibly odoriferous.
What does that mean?
Well, that she has not bathed or washed or cleaned.
Okay, as in odor.
Odor, yes.
Okay.
Odor, which we're saying it in a nice way, but that is what the word is, and you certainly did. That's fine as far as
my Latin was working.
That was very good. So the reality is, if that's happening, we're beginning to realize that this person needs some help. Now, in some instances, what we'll do next is we'll look and see whether there are helpers around. Let's say this is a 75-year-old woman who's been living alone all the time, and she was afraid to let anybody in, which was a good reason. That was very, very good. And that's why we did, let's talk through the phone, let's talk through the stoop. We don't have to come into your house today.
Right. Being the operative word there.
Meaning the operative word, exactly. Because what we're going to do is we're going to do our very best to at least get comfortable and have this lady get comfortable with us.
Sure.
Because what we basically want to do is help her. Now, a lot of times what we have to do is baby steps. Because if a person has been in the house alone for a very long time and nobody's been making phone calls to them, they've been basically isolated, which is a really bad thing for any elder person, because the more isolated they are, the more they can be abused, the more they can be harmed, and also the worse they get cognitively, because they're not using
socially interacting.
Exactly. So what we would do with that person under the circumstances is take very slow steps, but say, have you had any food? Do you have anything in your fridge? We're not asking you to let us come in, but if you would, we could check what you have, and maybe we can go out and do some grocery shopping for you. As time goes by, if we can do all these little things that we start with, the one little thing like grocery shopping, we can go into other areas as well. We can, depending on if a person is high income, and we won't know that right away, but if they have just income that is not the most or the best, then we can set up we can take care of the food. We'll take care of it. We'll pay for it.
So is that from county funds?
Exactly. We have a lot of gift cards that we've been using. We have a lot of, like Giant cards, Walmart, CVS. I mean, we can get medications for people. We start little by little, and we try very hard in a short period of time, mind you. Going, the same worker going back, one worker instead of two going back. Usually our nurse only goes once if they do go. And they assess the whole person as far as the medical situation is.
And under what circumstances does a nurse go? Like, what would the call sound like that would precipitate bringing the nurse?
Well, that's a good question, because there was once upon a time, 20 years ago, I started in Adult Protective Services, and I had a lot of other jobs before. So I'm kind of like right there with my clients. We're all the same age. But about 20 years ago, 18 years ago, we would go with a nurse and a social worker to every case. Things are getting tough, and as the years went by, that can't happen anymore. We always send a social worker because, Adult Protective Services is a social services product, basically. But what we do is, if as I said before, the lady is losing a lot of weight, that's what the neighbor is reporting. She's kind of looking through the window because she needs some extra, she wants to look at somebody just to see a human being, basically. If that's the situation, but especially losing weight, that's your big word. And that's the word that says, basically, you better bring a nurse as well, because we want you to do as much as you can to take a look at that nurse. And I have a wonderful story. I mean, I have many wonderful stories, but, many, many times when we had this one lady, we realized as we were knocking on the door for a half hour, and we really were knocking on in a very nice neighborhood. I was really concerned that, the police were going to come next to get us, because I had a very tall nurse and then myself, and I'm a midget. So the two of us are standing there knocking and knocking and knocking. We realized that she was trying to get out of bed, that when she did, she wasn't doing anything but crawling. We could see her through the window. We looked through windows. We looked. In her house, she had a sort of a mail slot. And so what we did is we talked through the mail slot. We talked to her and said, look, we want you to sit comfortably. Let me get you a soft chair. She let us open the door. We got that for her. She was terribly sick. She was diabetic. She had all sorts of problems she didn't even know. She was very, very emaciated. She was, there was complaints from in-home services, in-home aid services, but she wasn't letting them in anymore. She knew something was very wrong, and she didn't want to hear it, but it was happening.
She was in denial.
She was in total, absolutely. She just didn't want to know. And you know what? Some of us wouldn't want to know right away either. So what we ended up doing was I went out and I actually went into the kitchen, looked in the fridge, found for some things that, and she was diabetic, so found some things that we could give her that wouldn't harm her, but that would bring her blood sugar to the point where she'd be okay. When we went further and further and further, it took us 2, 3, 4 more times, she was terribly sick. She was terribly sick, but her family didn't know. We called her family on the West Coast. We made sure that they came and took her and spent time with her. She didn't have a lot of time left after that, but at least it wasn't on the bed with nobody seeing her and nobody knowing that she died.
Yeah.
We made sure that she had what she needed to be a human being, and that's what APS is all about.
Well, that sounds like a good place to stop before we resume after our break.
Absolutely.
So we're going to take a short break, and we will be right back.
Hey, Hard, what's this?
That's my resignation letter.
You're resigning.
Why? Because you're constantly ignoring me. You're half as active as you used to be, and you eat stuff like this. You've been putting me under a lot of pressure lately. That's why I'm ready to quit.
I forgot. I'll do better. Please, don't quit on me.
Okay, but remember, it's not what you say. It's what you do.
Listen to your heart. Don't let it quit on you.
Let's go for a walk.
Uncontrolled high blood pressure could lead to a stroke, heart attack, or death. Get yours to a healthy range before it's too late.
Welcome back to Senior Solutions, where we bring you topics affecting seniors and their loved ones. And I'm your host, Mindy Felinton. And I'm joined today by Bonnie Klem, who is the Supervisor of Adult Protective Services Investigations. And thank you so much again for being here today. I've learned so much in our brief conversation so far. And we were talking at the end about a situation with this woman who it was necessary to bring the nurse in to help to assess and help her along to, if there is a happy ending in that, certainly a happier ending than it could have been. But the neighbor who was the one who maybe made that call, what are some of the concerns that the neighbors might have? They're afraid, oh, they're going to hate me now. Tell us how that works and what the neighbor might not have to worry about, or anybody who wants to make the call to Adult Protective Services.
Well, first of all, if a person is making a call, but they're really nervous about doing it because they feel like they're doing something they shouldn't be doing, but they wanted to protect their neighbor that they've known who walks down the block and gets lost and walks in front of cars in the street and that sort of thing. So they want to do it, but they feel terrible. You can ask, when a person calls to make a referral for Adult Protective Services for a vulnerable adult, they actually can say, I want to be anonymous. Please do not put my name in front of, do not put my name in. We'll have the name because we'll need to get information from them, but that name is not available to anybody else. It is confidential. And incidentally, any Adult Protective Services case is confidential. You only get, if you go to court with a case, it only is handed over if the person agrees, the family agrees, or if the person is not available. But in reality, we usually do not even share those cases. Only a judge can ask for an APS case. That's the only kind of, so it's very confidential, number one. So that's to help people realize that their names are not going to be used. And in fact, when I was in the field, the only thing, when somebody said, who called you? Who told you to come here and see me? And I would say, I don't know, it's not the same department. The department took the case and I'm here to see you and I'm glad to see you. I'm glad you're here. So that's how we would do it. We almost never gave the name of anybody because it really, it makes it tough then. It makes a bad feeling inside, and you want those neighbors to be available. Now, sometimes, basically, somebody will knock on a door, and the neighbor will want to find out more about the person. They're not answering the door. Then they go back 2 days later, and they try and get someone to answer the door. They're not going back to answer the door. They're not going to answer the door. They're not going to answer the door. And we did a lot of role playing at one point, just recently when I was training a large group of people just about how to help out. And so I said, well, okay, so maybe start making the phone calls, like as I was describing before. Maybe just make the phone calls. Let's see if anybody answers the phone. Let's see if there's a phone ringing at all. Let's see what you can do if you can wait a week and try it out again. Don't give up, because eventually that person is going to need you no matter what, and especially if you're noticing something that's bad. Do something about it as soon as you can. You may not be able to get in right away. That's one of the big things. Nobody wants anybody to know when you're sick. It's like, go away, I'll be better, don't go away, don't come. So, so we try to make it as easy as possible to make sure that we're finding out that this person is in danger. And then we will go and look, and if we think that it's okay, that's fine. Also, be aware of the fact that if a client does not open the door, we say a client because that's very important. We owe them all of the good things that we're supposed to be doing, basically. So when they say, I don't want you coming here and I don't want you to tell me what to do, we actually, we'll try everything else as we said, but we don't have the right to do that because that's that person's house. It's where they're living, it's their abode, and we don't have a right to interfere in where they live and in their life if they don't want it to be given. Sometimes it works in a bad way.
For example?
They really need the help. They might be very sick, as we heard before. They might actually be terribly in need of food. They might be terribly in need of medical, especially medical care. They might have pneumonia. They might have all sorts of things. They're afraid. They're afraid to share with anybody. So we really try very hard, as you know, to get in. But Sometimes we can't. And when we can't, it's part of the regulations of Maryland. We can't.
So that's it? There's nothing that can be done?
Oh, no, we just go back and then we come back again. And then we'll make a couple of phone calls as well. If we can get phone calls and we can talk to them over the phone, we'll say, all right, why don't we just talk on the phone? Let's just talk on the phone. We'll talk to you on the phone and see if there's anything we can get for you that might be good, that might help you some. And if you want to hang up on us, then you can hang up on us. So, but there have been times where we knock and knock and knock on a door and nobody answers. We walk around, look at the windows to see if there's any activity, if we can see a window. We can't go through in a yard or anything if there's a fence because we don't have the right to do that. So these are all criteria that do keep us from doing what we're supposed to be doing, but also we're supposed to be giving people their rights. And we always have to give people their rights. So that's a large part.
And I guess it could be a frustrating situation for you as you're doing your investigations, knowing that you can't step beyond that line. When, in fact, you know this person really needs your help, but you have certain rules that you have to
There are rules.
Those darn rules get in the way all the time.
People have rights. People have the right to make bad decisions. The difference is if they're demented, and that's when they need to really be, we have to do something. That's when the guardianship piece comes through, when they're so demented and there's nobody to help them. But before we get to that level, we are going to find every relative that's available, whether they're in California, whether they're in, Tuscaloosa, wherever they are.
And how do you do that? How do you find relatives for somebody who's through a door or...
Well, if they've let us in, of course, it's really good because, and especially if there's two people, one person is chatting away and having a really nice time chatting with the client and asking all sorts of questions or nothing, but the other person is looking for a phone, because very often people have on, especially older people, on their refrigerator, there are names of people and numbers because they've forgotten them, especially if they're getting demented.
Right.
So that's when you see the number, the names and the numbers. We also, believe it or not, we Google. We go back and Google every name,
bless Google.
every name like it might be. I have one worker. She is so awesome. She Googles and Googles, and she finds people and she once wrote to 3 people because they had the same name, and she said, I don't know if this is the situation, and she wrote out the situation. She sent all 3 letters out, and lo and behold, she found the family, and the family wanted nothing more than to help her. But they really didn't even know where she was anymore. She found the family. They set things up. They set a good system up for her. She has home health. She has all sorts of things. So, it's amazing that if you can find the family and they're folks that really care, it makes a big difference.
And then what happens in those situations where you have the family who doesn't care?
Often that happens. And if the family doesn't care and this person cannot make decisions for themselves any longer, they do not have the capacity to do that, then we look at if they have money. Obviously we're looking for an attorney to help work with the guardianship component. If there isn't any, then we have to go ahead anyway, and our county attorney does then proceeds with what we need. I mean, we do not do guardianship with our county attorney unless it's the last degree as well.
Do you want to explain for those people who may not understand what a guardianship is, what that entails?
Absolutely.
Or describe it for
Or what you have to do. In fact, I spoke to a son yesterday on the phone for the first time, and he needed all this information. And I won't go back to him right now, but basically, his dad was driving him. His dad the culture is that dad gets anything he wants, whether he's okay or whether he isn't okay. And from everything that I heard, he's not okay. So basically, the son said, what do I do? What do I do? And I said, well, if you can't get him into a safer place and he wants to go back home and fall again for the 4th time, which he was already 3 times, and they were, head traumas, which don't go away. It doesn't get easier. So I said, here's what you do. You do need to have 2 professionals. I usually try to get 1 doctor at least, and then social workers actually who can also do assessments on capacity. And if we have these 2 assessments that say that this person is in danger unless they have a guardian to make decisions for them safely. That's what it is, basically. It goes to, it's a court situation. It becomes a court situation, and that's the very last thing we ever do. Mm-hmm. But if there's nobody, you mentioned, what do you do if there's nobody to help?
Right, or the family just doesn't want to step up to the plate.
They don't want to step up to the plate, and sometimes you have dueling arguers.
Yes.
And that's the worst. I mean, that's the part I want to sort of knock everybody's head together and say, stop that. But
play nice in the sandbox.
That's just talking to you here. I can't do that for real, but I would love to do that for real. But, we can't do that.
Yes,
so we just
I can relate to that.
We go
sentiment.
through the professional concept of just doing what we have to do. So whether it's public guardianship or whether it's guardianship, of an attorney, thank you, that's what we need. That's what we need, because they are not safe to do it on their own. And sometimes you see people in weird situations. I remember seeing this one man. He was in a horrible, hot house. There was no furniture except a hospital bed. He had a cell phone. He was making cell phone calls, and he was pretty competent. But all he had during most of the day was these cups that were like foam cups, the cups that you can throw away but you can keep for a while. And he would have a big ice cube, and somebody would bring him the ice cube to his bed, and he would drink all through a couple of hours, and then he would get more food, and then he would drink, and he'd get more. But the point is, I got it wasn't a therapist, it was a psychiatrist. We had that time we had a psychiatrist who would come and check how they felt about a person's cognitive abilities. And so the two men argued together, the one on the hospital bed and the psychiatrist. And when the whole thing ended, we walked out, and he said, "You have a right to do whatever you want to do." And he did, because he was perfectly competent. And we walked out the door, and it was hot. My only fear was that I was going to fall on the dirty floor and pass out on it. But anyway, the point of the matter was that that's what he was living in. But as far as the psychiatrist said, he's an old fool. Just like I'm old, but he's an old fool, and we can't do anything about that. And I said, thank you. And I was at least aware of the fact that we have to let him make mistakes. Mm-hmm. People need to make decisions on their own. And that's a great part of Adult Protective Services, because that's giving them the rights that they should have, and the rights to feel that they're independent and what they want to do when they have capacity.
Yes, that's the key.
That's right.
Now, if someone wanted to get in touch with your office, how would they do that?
We have one line, so it's very easy, and it's a 24/7 line. It's all day long, 7 days a week. And basically it's 240-777-3000.
Okay, that's
and then that gets moved to us.
Okay.
Or we have direct lines as well, but that's the way to get to Adult
All right,
Protective Services.
Great.
And it goes over to the crisis center at night, but we still have 24/7.
Okay. Thank you so much. I really appreciate your being here today. It was very informative.
Thank you.
And if you have any ideas for a topic you'd like to see on Senior Solutions, please feel free to email me at seniorsolutionsTV@gmail.com. Otherwise, we'll see you next time.